So this class is about model building using Excel. So many of the models that we are going to consider in this class are those that you may have already seen in your other classes like finance or accounting, or some of them you may not have seen yet. Some of them, especially for those of you who have yet to take the MBA 514, which is the Strategic Operations Management, which you will be taking next term. Many of the models that we will see here are applicable to that course. But even if you haven't taken any of those, you haven't seen those models yet, I have some video sort of lectures, some that I adopted from YouTube, some from my classes, that you can review the models and then translate them into Excel. Okay, so one of the most important sort of prerequisites or things that you need to have in this class in order for this to be, a fun class for you, is that you have basic Excel skill. If you don't, I have provided in the Moodle course some videos that you can watch that will help you get updated on certain Excel functions. And one of the most important Excel functions that I advise Excel users to know is this difference between absolute and relative address. Okay, because if you do know this absolute and relative cell address, how to use it in formulas, the copy and pasting could be much easier. You don't have to spend much time recreating formulas. Instead, you can just create one formula and then copy that across the row or down in the columns. Okay, so we'll have an exercise today that will review us on that topic. Then, I encourage you to look at some of the graphics, the tutorials in graphing, how to create XY graphs, how to create line charts, because those are important in model building. So we'll not only create formulas related to models, but we're going to create graphics that will be tied to those models. I'll show you some examples shortly. And then another important function that we need to know is the use of the if function. Another important Excel skill to know is the use of conditional formatting. This is one that can make your model colorful or be interactive in the sense that if a number or an item meets a certain criteria or criterion, you can change the color or the background, the font automatically. And then we'll have a VLOOKUP. We'll look at how to use the VLOOKUP today. So I'm not going to go through the entire list here, but again, I would encourage you to take a look at them for future classes. So let's look at some of the applications or workbooks that I have created that incorporate this, what I call as interactive templates. Let's start with something that we use in the School of Business. When I was chair way back in 2004 until 2011, one of the responsibilities I had was to create term-by-term schedule. And if you have done this kind of task, you know that scheduling is a very time-consuming, tedious process. Especially, in our case, when we create schedules, you look at the courses that you're offering, the classrooms where these courses are going to be assigned, the instructors that will be teaching these courses. And there are constraints that we have to consider. Like, for example, one constraint would be if you have a classroom like this one that's available, say, from 8:30 to 10:30. That's how we schedule classes in maybe 2-hour blocks. That you make sure that, one course is not, there's only one course scheduled in a classroom in a certain time, right? And also one instructor. Now, the constraint might be that for professors, regular professors, that depending on the track, whether a professorial or professional, they're assigned either 3 or 4 classes per term. So you have to keep track in terms of the number of courses, no more than 4 or no less than 3, no less than 4, right? This is an Excel workbook with different color background. And then you have here hyperlinked bars that if I click this, it'll go to a particular worksheet in the workbook. So let's look at the faculty loading. So this is my resource, number of courses. So in this workbook, you have the different instructors, all right? And then in this, the white cells is typically just an input cell. So I try to use a color coding when I develop worksheets or workbooks. Certain colors are computed, like for example here, this for here, I want to make sure that Sarah is not scheduled more than the number of courses that she is supposed to teach in the fall term. All right. So if I say, hey, Sarah needs only 3 courses in the fall term, okay, but I have scheduled her for 4. Now, if I'm building this schedule, I would make sure that this particular, there's a remark column that would flag me to that this is more than the total number that Sarah is supposed to schedule for the year. When I changed this to 3, this didn't make any remark because I have to type in here really that the total number of courses that Sarah is going to teach, which is 10. And see that? Did you see that? It says here over by 1. Okay. So here this is an input cell because I need to tell in my scheduling that Sarah over the course of the year has to teach 11, and they should be, they should sum up to 11. Okay, so that's the kind of imagine that if the scheduling is not sort of quote unquote intelligent enough to know whether you have overscheduled or underscheduled a resource, it is very difficult to find inconsistencies in the scheduling. So this particular worksheet will also track the course if specific courses, especially required courses, we want to make sure that they are offered at least once a year. Now, for example, these are all required classes in the undergraduate program. All right, so it says here, all right, they've been scheduled, we're covered. Yes?
Could you increase the zoom a little?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I can do that. Thank you. Okay, so if there's a particular course that I'm interested in seeing if that has been scheduled, see this cell here? If I type maybe 380, that's the operations management class I teach, the 380 is highlighted in blue. So this is when I use the conditional formatting, that when this is satisfied, change the color background of a cell or a row or a column. And this is another hyperlink back to the table of contents. Okay? So, the things that I'm going to be showing you are not just things that are, in theory, good to use, but actually things that I use both as an administrator or past administrator and as, in teaching my classes. Okay? A couple of other interactive Excel workbooks I have created. So this is now, some of you have taken an undergraduate statistics class from me, and which you may have seen this Excel workbook I have created to accompany a statistics textbook. So same thing as in that scheduling, this is an interactive workbook. Okay, interactive in the sense that you type in a certain input, and then parts of the workbook or worksheet are automatically changed. All right, so an example would be perhaps descriptive statistics. You're given a sample data, maybe a small sample data, and you want to compute certain statistics like average, standard deviation, minimum, maximum value, and so on and so forth. Although, in Excel, you can compute certain descriptive statistics, but if you use Excel's data analysis module, which would be here, you'd have to go through several clicks before you're able to generate the statistics. So one way to simplify matters is by creating a workbook that you input, like the data over here, and the statistics will be computed over here. All right, so let's say I'm going to change the data set, reduce it from 10 observations to 5 observations. Note that the statistics were computed automatically. So that means that I have in here, there are formulas that compute certain statistics. Now, you don't see the formulas over here in the formula bar because for this particular workbook, proprietary workbook that I really don't want to share especially, with students, I am okay with that, but outside, beyond SOU, I'm trying to protect that. So let me remove the protection so that you can see the formulas. I hope I still remember the unprotect, okay. All right, okay, so see that? Did you see that when I unprotected the worksheet, it shows the formula, okay? So there are certain formulas. For example, here it says average and then data set, which means that in this formula, the function to compute an average of sample uses the equals average. And then the data set here, sometimes, in most of the time, you see a range of cells, right? Like C8 to C12. But instead of using cell addresses, using the column and row numbers, I'm using a named range. Okay, so that's another thing that another technique that I would encourage you to start using is using named cells or named ranges, because the use of named cells and ranges makes it easier to review your formulas. All right, let's look at another more interactive worksheet where the information is connected to a graphic. Say here, the standard normal curve. So for those of you who are still familiar with the basic statistics concept, the normal distribution is the most commonly used distribution in almost any field. Whether you are a business student or a psych student, you will come across applications of the normal distribution. So understanding its application is important. So here's what we call as the standard normal distribution, meaning the distribution of the z values, that if you're given a particular z value, this template will compute for you the probability that the z-score the z value will be less than -1.5, so that's this here. And here's the probability that the z-score will be greater than 1.5. This is that white area. So here's the input cell. Say that you have a problem, maybe a marketing problem. Dr. Siders give you this marketing example that says, hey, the average price of a particular product is such and such. What's the probability of, selecting a store at random and the price by the store is greater than or less than some number, given that the standard deviation is such and such. So for that kind of problem, you can convert the random number into a z-score and then solve the probability. Okay, so let's say that the z-score for this price of this particular store is 2.0, okay, meaning 2 standard deviations above the average price for this product. So you just type in that 2.0 there. Okay, so that's the input item, and you see that the curve is shaded. And not only the curve is shaded, but look at this thing here. It now says probability that z is less than 2. So the z value changed from -1.5 to 2. So in this workbook, we will learn how to use, this concatenate function where you can fuse together text and numbers. Okay. All right. So I can go on and on with all these examples, but this kind of just giving you an overview, or at least a bird's eye view of what we will attempt to do in this class, and hopefully at the end of the term, you will have learned basic Excel functions and skills and techniques that, if you are working on an Excel workbook for your work or for your other classes, that you can take advantage of the different ways to make the process more efficient. You don't want to be recreating something over and over again. What the smart thing to do is that if you are doing a certain process repeatedly, build a model that if you have certain inputs or parameters that you change and you're doing a what-if analysis, you can take advantage of this interactive ability, your work or your templates. Okay, so are we clear so far?